most recently at the RAALP office.
See, I forgot the best way to do this. Can you hear me back there? Can you hear me now? Better with the speaker? How was I going to start out here? One of the things that we talked about before I start the story is the audience had to be really supportive and helpful in our classes. In other words, the other members, the other storytellers, and you have been a great audience. You've been patient. I was looking back at your, on the artwork back there, and a lot of donations are being made. So you have been great participants of this program and this day. I want to thank you. All right. So the title of my story is Swimming. And a couple of stats. New Mexico is ranked 49th in water area, which is not surprising, right? But alarmingly, it's ranked 11th in child drownings. Nearly 60% of Americans cannot swim. New Mexicans, I would say that stat's even higher. As Brenda mentioned, I grew up in the small northeastern New Mexico town of Cimarron, which is near the Colorado border, about 30 miles from the Colorado border. That was in the mid-1950s and early 70s. If you were a teenager during that era, which I was, in the summertime in Cimarron, you played sports, you worked, or you hung out at the only burger/ice cream shop in town. Recreational swimming was not among those popular summer pastimes, mostly because there was nowhere to swim. The Cimarron River ran through town, but it was more often a creek or a stream for some fishing and wading. The only motel in town, the Kit Carson, had a small pool for customers that accommodated about 10 to 12 people. Locals were allowed to swim during slow hours for the motel, which was usually early in the week. Most of my teenage summer evenings were spent playing basketball. Occasionally I dropped by the Kit Carson pool to see friends, but not once did I ever desire to step into the water. No matter how hot the day, no matter how much fun everyone else seemed to be having, the water just did not seem inviting or friendly to me. Now, I was holding a secret inside me as to why I didn't like the water. I was around 8 years old, and my dad, who hadn't been in my life since my birth, somehow had convinced my mom to let him take my older brother and me on a road trip to White Sands Monument in southern New Mexico. It was the only trip I would ever take with my dad my entire life. The plan was to spend the night in Alamogordo, see the sights the next day, and then return home. Pretty simple. After checking in at a motel which had a medium-sized outdoor pool, we had a little snack, and then my dad stopped at a store and bought us some swimming trunks. When we returned to the motel, he told us to get out to the pool. He was going to teach us to swim. I had never been in a pool before, and the water seemed pretty scary. Heck, I hadn't even been in a bathtub at that point in life. We grew up with the cajetes. Those are the round tubs with about 3 or 4 inches of water. So that was the most water I had ever been in. So as a little boy, you can imagine how intimidating that pool seemed. As I was eyeing the water nervously, quite a ways from the edge, my dad came up behind me. And without any warning, grabbed me, picked me up, and tossed me in the middle of the pool. Panic. My little arms flailing everywhere, gasping for air. Frightened, as only a child can be frightened. My dad jumped back in and grabbed me. I don't remember a whole lot about that moment, other than it was a blur and it took place in a matter of seconds. And I knew I would hate swimming forever after that. Then, in 1975, while attending the College of Santa Fe, I decided to battle that demon. I registered for a swimming class through the college's PE department. The class was held at the Salvador Perez swimming pool, which is near the Trader Joe's today. It took a lot of courage for me to get in the water, and the instructor, Mr. Winter, could tell from the very first class how uncomfortable I was in the water. "Don't worry," he said, trying to sound confident. "I'll teach you how to swim." I'm sure I ended up being his all-time worst student. It was so frustrating and strange. I was a superior athlete. But I got in the water and I could not master the basic swimming stroke. Was it a mental block? Was it trauma? Was it fear? Or all of the above? Other students were supportive. "Hang in there," they tell me. "You'll get it, you'll get it." At midterm, I was still dog paddling and afraid to go towards the deep end of the pool. So, to pass the class, we had to swim 2 laps around the Olympic-sized pool without stopping. And this is basically to prove that we could survive in a pool or an emergency an emergency situation without drowning. The thought of failing a PE class didn't sit well with me. So I started staying after class a little bit, and I was just trying to figure out, how can I do this? I finally learned, with the semester winding down, to backstroke a little bit, to float on my back. I could move around the pool a little bit. And I would think about it, and I was like, I'm looking up, right? I'm not looking down into the water. What a difference it made. So the big day arrived, the final test. It seemed like it took forever, but I made the 2 laps around the pool and passed the class with a C-. I always think Mr. Winter was being a little generous to me. During that class, I often thought about how that childhood incident in Alamogordo all those years ago had impacted me. I don't think about it too much anymore, but when I do, it's a reminder of how one brief moment in life can traumatize or scar us. And as for my dad, we were estranged for over 35 years. In the early 1990s, we managed to reconnect. We visited, he helped me out with some life things. We had coffee and we talked football and basketball. Then in the fall of 2003, his health declined rapidly and I was with him on the day he died. We were alone, and with some of the last words I would hear from him, with some of his final breaths, he asked me to forgive him. I doubt that either one of us was thinking about that swimming, that crazy swimming incident at the pool in the 1960s. For his part, I'd say he was thinking about how he could have been a better dad, maybe a better person. For my part, I was thankful. I carried no anger, no resentment towards him. And I told him, I forgive you. I also said, it's okay. It's just the way life turned out, the way it was meant to be. We all got through it. Thank you. All right, so our final story of the